We started this podcast on episode 1, basically talking about this new wave of AI that's out there, right? This idea of Agentic AI being this new thing. And it was a great conversation with Reza, kind of understanding like how it needs to be created and how do we get there and kind of like what the differences are. But now it's here. We are now seeing the tipping point of AI happen where it's going from generative, which is the ChatGPT thing, the AI that we saw kind of like launch maybe 3 years ago and continues to get better, to agentic. And agentic is this tipping point that people have been seeing where, for better or for worse, it's going to start replacing workforce to a certain extent. You know, the reports right now are essentially saying that entry-level jobs are likely going away. It's nuts, right? It's pretty nuts. But even within all this type of stuff, I still get a lot of questions on what the difference is between agentic and generative AI. And that's why I wanted to take an opportunity right now when we're at this tipping point where it's starting to get really, really normalized that this is happening to explain how I've learned what agentic versus generative AI means. And I feel pretty comfortable with my understanding of it. So hopefully this is usable to you. Welcome to the Property Management Frame Breakers podcast. I'm your host, Pablo Gonzalez, and I am here to introduce you to the folks in the property management space that have broken the frame of what you may believe was possible. This podcast is presented by Vendoroo. It is your all-in-one AI solution for resolving your maintenance needs. Let's go. So how do we get to this tipping point where the news has gone from this belief of somebody, you know, like you're not going to lose your job to AI, but somebody using AI is going to take your job, to I'm now starting to see pretty widespread this idea that entry-level jobs are likely on the chopping block over the next year or two, right? This idea that AI is going from creating better tools inside of our existing tools to replacing certain levels of workforce and doing jobs for us, right? This is the big shift of agentic. And I think one of the main concepts that need to be really, really understood is one of my favorite examples to give is this idea that if you think about the world 20 years ago, we're talking about 2005, and businesses are wondering whether or not to run a yellow page ad versus a Google ad, right? Like that was really a debate. There was people die hard in the corner of yellow pages are never going away. I'm going to keep doing this. And people that ran Google ads crushed. Now think about 2005. Local businesses honestly weren't totally sold on the idea that they needed a website. Facebook didn't exist. The iPhone didn't exist, right? Like we didn't have smartphones. And think about all that's changed over 20 years till today. And that, again, is being done under Moore's Law. Computing power doubling every 2 years. Now we're in 2025. AI is doubling every 6 months. That is 4 times faster. That means that what happened in 20 years will happen in 5 years. That means that the change of 2005 like needing a website and thinking that the yellow pages are where it's at to now will likely be equal to the difference between today and 2030, just 5 years down the line. So let that sink in and let's talk about this new inflection point of agentic. The way that I like to describe generative versus agentic that works really well for me is generative is like a genie. You rub the lamp, you ask for a wish, you get your wish, you rub the lamp again. This is ChatGPT. This is Claude, right? Like this is Grok. These are these large language models that allow for much better pattern recognition, good enough to give you a great kind of start on something that you were stuck on. I use it a lot for writing. I know a lot of us use it a lot for writing. You can use it for like sentiment analysis. You can use it for coding. There's all these different things, but at the end of the day, you're still pushing the button, getting a draft, revising it, pushing a button again. And it's like an unbelievable assistant that makes you do your job way faster, do your job better, great brainstorming partner, right? But like it's still your brain really driving the bus. Agentic isn't a genie. Agentic is more like the Terminator, right? The Terminator was sent back into the past to kill John Connor, and it didn't want to stop until it did that, right? Like that's what agentic AI is, right? It is trained to do a job and continue to like improve get better at doing it and not stop until that job is done. It's essentially, I think if you peel behind the curtain, it's kind of like multiple generative models put into workflows and then continually trained in a certain way that allows it to own an outcome, right? So it's process plus large language model plus a whole bunch of like computer science wizardry that you and I don't really need to understand at this point. What you need to understand is the outcomes that it can produce. And that is the thing that the media is now talking about and experts are talking about that will take away entry-level jobs, right? Like if it can really own these like entry-level jobs, what are college kids going to go do, right? That's a scary future. But for right now, we're not going to live in the fear. We're going to live in what's happening and what it means, right? So what does it mean for an AI to do a job for you? What's the great value prop here, right? I think that the great value prop here is essentially error-proof operations at a very basic level, right? Things that don't need a whole ton of expertise will now be done without the limitation of human capacity. That is human error. That is the ability to work 24/7, to never take a day off, to be available at 3 a.m. on a Saturday and sober, to never be in a bad mood, right? To standardize how these simple things get done is without errors is one really big value prop. It also like unlocks capacity, right? The difference between a great employee that like never makes a mistake and is available 24/7 and if that was even a real thing, and an agentic AI is that employee could not be in 3 meetings at once, right? Like that employee could not be on the phone with 5 different residents doing 5 different concerns the way that, our receptionist can take multiple calls and route them the right way at the same time, right? So that's the value prop right there, right? You are now breaking beyond human capacity of workload, scale, decision-making, power to make that happen while owning an outcome. Now, that sounds great, but it has to be able to also work like a person, if a normal person like myself or like you is going to be able to do it. What does that mean? That means I don't need to be a programmer to see what my agentic AI is doing in order to make it better, right? Like there should be a way as these agents progress, just like you would manage a human peer or a human employee, there is going to be oversight into how that agent is functioning. And, while it'll be perfect on doing the job the way that it's trained, every once in a while something will happen where it's going to have to do something a little bit different based on the context. And you should be able to see it and say, oh, hey, like next time that pops up, instead of doing it this way that you've been trained on doing it, do it that way. Same way that you would train an employee, right? So like these agents will start to perform this way. That is another key thing of agentic AI, right? Like it shouldn't be like a work ticket or like recoding. It should be like, oh, hey, instead of that way, do it this way from now on when this is happening, the same way that you train somebody. These agents, if they're going to take on these jobs and they're going to be like ubiquitous in culture, will be trained to work outside of like whatever one software platform, right? Like right now, meaning if you have an employee, they're going to show up on day one and they're going to be trained up on the way that you do things, as opposed to an employee showing up on day one and saying, oh, hey, these are the softwares I use now. Your company now needs to use these softwares, right? That doesn't make sense, right? Like that wouldn't be a true agent. That would be a feature inside of a software, right? So like, and that's really important to think about it because, in this world of technology right now, everybody is AI, right? Like everybody is now AI. And there's kind of like, so some are implementing generative. Many, if a software out there hasn't been implementing generative AI, they're asleep at the wheel, right? But now we're starting to see not just us, but other softwares talk about implementing agentic. Right. And, that kind of lends itself to like a little bit of like AI washing and stuff. Let's talk about what truly agentic means, right? Because there's three ways of approaching this. If you're an existing software, existing technology provider, there's kind of three ways to bring an AI to the market right now. There is some softwares that have been around for a long time that are now have been injecting AI, generative AI into what they're doing, and now they're building agents within their software. And they're saying, hey, we're this like big software machine, and we're going to do the best AI for our software. And I promise you that this is what you're going to want, because if not, things might break, and it's in your best interest, right? Like Microsoft Copilot is doing that, right? Like, but listen to the words of what Microsoft Copilot is. It's the Copilot. It's not the main thing. They're using AI to enhance their software, not using AI to do whatever it takes, right? And I think some software platforms are going to start doing that. Those software platforms or technology partners, if they are not opening it up for you to use your own agents that are either made by you or somebody else, they're essentially telling you, you know what, this whole like Moore's Law, 4x of AI doubling every 6 months, you're just going to have to trust us that we're going to move at the speed that's best for you, not the speed that you think is best for you, right? Then there's the next level of kind of software provider. They're going to be building agents. They're going to be, they've been inserting generative AI into their functions, but they're also have the wherewithal to know that what's best for you is in a time of rapid change for you to be able to like iterate and not have this like high cost of switching and be able to like test stuff inside their software. And they're going to have these like super user friendly APIs or ways to plug into it, or marketplaces or whatever that don't really tax you or the technology provider in order to plug into it, because they understand that it's additive, right? Like I always use Rentvine as an example of that. They're definitely developing awesome AI around accounting and all these different things, and they're very open to anybody plugging into that, right? So that is the existing technology provider, two different ways of doing it. And then there's a third group. There is the group that is just building agents. They're just building these like future workforce employees that will integrate into whatever tech stack you have, that will own outcomes, that will be trainable like a human, and that will show up on day one with like a whole bunch of knowledge and do things really well, but you're going to continue to be able to customize it through this like centralized context that is different than call scripts or decision-making trees or whatever. It will be truly naturally moving and be able to have conversations and adapt and learn as it goes, right? That is, Vendoroo, as far as I understand, Vendoroo is the only one that's truly just doing that in the property management space, but more will come, right? And you need to understand the difference between these three, because the first one has this risk of, man, if you're making it too difficult to do this, you're putting my business at risk of like missing out on this wave by making the pain too much. The other ones are allowing you to keep staying in your system and adding on. And then there's others that are literally just like offering you these tools. Pretty soon, you can also build your own if that's something that you're going to want to do, right? Like that's happening right now. I see Wolfgang Krosky doing that, building his own agents. I believe Tiffany Rosenbaum is doing that. She's building some agents. She's investing some of that stuff. I think the most sophisticated operators, just like some of the bigger property management companies function on Salesforce, and they've like built it unique to their own thing. You're going to be able to like spend money and spend time and do this if you're at that scale. But for folks at a lower scale, people that are building agents for you to plug in will allow you to compete with the bigger, more sophisticated people. And then there's the theme of like a horizontal layer versus a vertical layer, right? Like tools like JotForm are a horizontal layer that's allowing you to build agents across multiple inputs. And then there's vertical layers that are folks like us. We are building AI agents to handle maintenance. And what does that mean? That means that the agent is trained of the different parts of maintenance for us, right? Like the receptionist is trained on intake and conversations and being the tip of the spear on a conversation that can lead to maintenance and troubleshooting, but it can also lead to other things and get routed intelligently. The Resiroo is the one talking to the residents that's meant to be empathetic, calm people down, understand kind of like what's going on, the context, be able to receive pictures and videos until they triage it and decide that they can troubleshoot it and do it, or assign it to a vendor, or realize that this is an emergency and escalate it and continue to do it with an empathetic turn, like way of doing it. Then there's the VenCom side of it, where it's just like, hey, how do you actually create an AI that communicates with vendors and helps them understand that this job is really, really worth their time and that they're going to show up? And then there's the owner communication side of it, right? Like these are the 4 different agents on top of like the PMRU, which is our 5th one, that understands everything inside of a work order and just talks to you directly. All of these things have different emotional intelligences, and you can only do it and be really, truly emotionally intelligent in these high variability of context environments as going very, very vertical. Otherwise, what you're getting is a very vanilla kind of more like a decision tree that is meant to get you to a person. And here is something that is also super important. The person will always be required, right? Like there will always be things that this agent won't be able to do. And it's really important for it to be able to recognize when that is and recognize when to move it forward. So when companies are building agents, they're gonna have the opportunity to tell you, hey, this is just our solution, you figure out the rest, or there's gonna be a solution where there is extra humans in the loop in order to guarantee that those decisions don't have to spill over into the folks within your walls until a further level, right? There is this a layer of oversight, the same way that you would manage your employees, that can come within the delivery of the agent itself. And that's really, really important because, at the end of the day, SaaS and this last era of software has been built on kind of not owning outcomes, has been built on just creating efficiencies and then punting it off to you and benefiting from that scale. This new generation of agent builders will have to sacrifice a certain little bit of scale, whether it's that horizontal layer that, you can go across all things in order to really specialize, or sacrifice a little bit of scale in, really being able to have the humans in the loop that can guarantee kind of as this grows. It's not going to be able to grow as fast as just a regular SaaS software, right? And that is one of the things that we figured out here. It's the idea that no matter how good the agent gets, there will always need to be a human in the loop to back that up, and everything just keeps proving that, right? So as our solution becomes AI first, meaning the AI is making more and more decisions, that human in the loop is creating less and less, there is more scale, but there is a big, big time to ramp up for anybody that's getting into this agent game where, they're going to want to move at the speed of SaaS and just be yeah, we can do it and go. And that's going to break a lot of stuff. And the people that suffer are the ones that, run the company. And I know this because we've done it. Right? The first generation of Vendoroo, we had a whole bunch of churn because we hadn't figured that piece out. So we're here basically a year later, and now the solution truly is AI first, and we've realized this kind of balance, and we continue to tweak it as we continue to add humans in the loop for this, right? So that's the thing. These are the things that you need to understand as these agents roll out, right? As you start wondering, is it time to pass this off to a, is this time to hire an agent to do this entry level stuff or mid-level stuff? These are the questions that you want to ask, right? It's how do I feel about the guarantee of the decision-making power, right? Are they guaranteeing it based on training? Is it contextualized to you? Does it learn horizontally or vertically? How do I make it better myself? How else can, they tell me that, this is being guaranteed? Next question you want to ask yourself is, does this mean that I'm tied to one software, or does this mean that I can use this agent across whatever softwares I want as things change and I shuck and jive and this rate of change continues, right? So it's got to being able to, the more systems that I can embed into, the better. The least systems that it holds you hostage to, the better. How do you get to continue to train it? Right? Are you just getting a horizontal thing that hey, here you go, this is about as good as a 4-year employee, or here's a 4-year employee that you can continue to manage it up the same way that you do with somebody until it becomes super, super powerful? And are they willing to keep a human in the loop in order and sacrifice a little bit of scale in order to not make you own the problem, in order to completely own that outcome? And that's basically the difference between agentic and generative, right? It's how much you're owning the outcome versus the agent owning the outcome, and how confident you are in the decisions that are being made. I hope that this was really, really helpful. we are at this tipping point. This 6-month thing continues to happen. So we're hosting another AI summit that's coming up next week on, I believe it is June 11th at 3 o'clock. Notes are going to be, go to the show notes to sign up for it, because we're going to do this every 6 months, because AI is doubling in power every single 6 months. And, right now, the biggest change has been this idea that agents have entered the mix. People are building their own, like our capacity has become insane, right? Like gone from a very human process to a very agentic AI process, and only getting better. And it's going to continue to happen as this AI race keeps forward, and you're going to continue to want to stay informed on all this stuff. So thanks for listening.